Hello, guys. Today we are going to start from our chapter first of class 12th biology for any competitions like CUET or NEET. So let's move forward. As we know that CUET hasn't changed any of its syllabus, right? But NEET has changed some of the syllabus. So according to the CUET program, we are going to complete all the chapters of class 12th biology, physics, and chemistry. Reading NCERT reading of all the chapters will be uploaded soon, and I'll complete it one video at a time. Like I'll upload one video per day. That's my resolution for this year 2024. And by the way, guys, happy new year and all the best for your upcoming exam, which is going to be in 4 months. So get ready. And yeah, for my on because I was not really active of because of my family functions. I'll try to give you all some surprises like surprises are not yet to be revealed. Surprises are meant to be surprised, to make you surprised, right? So it's a surprise. So mm let's start this chapter. Chapter 1: Sexual Reproduction and Flowering Plants. Flower, a fascinating organ of angiosperms, pre fertilization, structures and events, double fertilization, post fertilization, structure and events, apomixis, and polyembryony. Are, are we not lucky that the plant reproduce sexually? The myriad of flowers that we enjoy gazing at, the scents and the perfumes that we swoon over, the rich colors that attract us are all there as, are all there as an aid to sexual reproduction. Flowers do not exist only for us to be used for our own selfishness. Are all flowering plants show sexual reproductions. A look at the diversity of the structures of the inflorescence, flowers, and the floral parts shows an amazing range of adaptations to ensure formation of end products of sexual reproduction, the fruits and the seeds. Right? Okay. This is called the phanerochems. In this chapter, let us understand the morphology, structure, and process of sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. Flower, a fascinating organ of angiosperms. Human beings have had an intimate relationship with flowers since time immemorial. Flowers are objects of aesthetic, ornamental, social, religious, and cultural value that they have always been used as a symbol of conveying important human feelings such as love, affection, happiness, grief, mourning, etc. List at least 5 flowers of ornamental value that are commonly cultivated at homes and in gardens, right? It's a homework for you guys. Find out the name of five more flowers that are used in the social and cultural celebrations in your family. Have you heard of floriculture? Okay. Have you ever heard of floriculture? What does it refer to? Just Google it, guys. You will get the answers. Don't just ignore it. To a biologist, flowers are morphologically and embryological marvels and the sites of the sexual reproduction. In earlier classes, you have read the various parts of flower, right? And figure 1.1 will help you to recall the parts of the typical flower. Can you name the two parts of the flower in which the two most important units of sexual reproduction develop? Can you? Okay. As moving forward, we will be able to answer all those questions which are asked in this middle of the chapters. Right. So in this diagram, figure 1.1, a diagrammatic representation of the lower section of lateral section of a flower. So the first one we can see is stigma is pointed out, and then below it style, tube-like structure, style, then anther, and then petal. Filament is also filament is also pointed out, then it sepals, and then ovary. Pre-fertilization structure and events. Much much before the actual flower is seen, and on a plant, the decision that the plant is going to flower has taken place. Several hormonal and structural changes are initiated, which lead to the differentiation and further development of the floral primordium. Inflorescence are formed which bear the floral buds and then the flowers. In the flower, the male and the female reproductive structure, the andro, androecium and the gynoecium, differentiate and develop. In the flower, the male and the female reproductive structures, the androecium and the gynoecium, differentiate and develop. You would recollect that the androecium consists of a whole of stamens representing the male reproductive organ, and the gynoecium represent the female reproductive organ. So stamens, microsporangium, and pollen grains. Figure 1.2a shows the two parts of the typical stamen. Okay, two parts of this typical stamen: the long and the slender stalk called the filament, and the typical terminal generally bilobed structure called the anther. The proximal uh, end of the filament is attached to the thalamus or the petal of the flower. The proximal end of the filament is attached to the thalamus or the petal of the flower. The number and the length of the stamens are variable in various flowers and flowers of the different species. If you were if you were to collect a stamen each from the 10 flowers, each from the different species, and arrange them on the slide, you will be able to appreciate the large variation in size and size seen in the nature. Careful observation of each stamen under a dissecting microscope and making a neat diagram would elucidate the range in the shape and the attachment of the anthers in different flowers. A typical angiosperm's anther is bilobed with each lobe having two theca, that is, they are dithecous. Often a longitudinal groove runs lengthwise separating the theca. Let us understand the various types of tissues and their organization in the transverse section of an anther. Okay. Let us understand the various types of the tissues. Various types of the tissues and their organization in the transverse section of the anther. The bilobed nature of the anther is very distinct to the in the transverse section of the anther. The anther is a four-sided tetragonal structure consisting of four microsporangia located at the corners, two in each lobe. The microsporangia develop further and become pollen sacs. They extend longitudinally all through the length of the anther and are packed with the pollen grains. The sporangia develop further and become pollen sacs. They extend longitudinally all through the length of the anther and are packed with the pollen grains. Structure of microsporangium. In the transverse section, a typical microsporangium appears near circular in outline. It is generally surrounded by four walls layers: the epidermis, the endothecium, middle layers, and the tapetum. The outer three walls are to perform the function of the protection and help in the dehiscence of the anther to release the pollen. The innermost wall layer is The innermost wall layer is the tapetum. It nourishes the developing pollen grains. Cells of the tapetum possesses dense cytoplasm and generally have more than one tapetum, more than one nucleus. Can you think of the tapetal cells could become binucleated when the anther is young? A group of compactly arranged homogeneous cells called the sporogenous tissue occupy the center of the microsporangium. Microsporogenesis. As the anther develops, the cells of the sporogenous tissues undergo meiotic divisions to form microspore tetrad. What would be the ploidy of the cells of the tetrad? As each of the sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rise to the microspore tetrad, as each cell of the sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rise to the microspore tetrad. Each one is a potential pollen or microspore mother cells. The process of formation of the microspores form a pollen mother cells through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. The microspores are they formed as they are formed are arranged in the clusters of the four cells. The microspore tetrad dissociate. Okay. As the anthers mature and dehydrate, the microspores dissociate from each other and develop into pollen grains. Inside each microsporangium, several thousands of microspores or pollen grains are formed that are released with the dehiscence of the anther. Pollen grain in the figure 1.3c. Okay, we will see that. Where is it? 1.3c. Here is the transverse section of the young anther. The enlarged B1 is the enlarged view of one microsporangium showing wall layers. Okay. This is first one is the young anther transverse section, and last one is the mature dehisced anther where the pollen grains are coming outside. Okay, so the young one middle layers. Okay, the connective tissue is also pointed out. Epidermis, endothelium, sporogenous tissue is also pointed out. Tapetum is pointed out. Middle layers is pointed out. So we can see the epidermis, endothelium, middle layers, and microspore mother cells, and then microspore mother cells, then tapetum. In the last figure, we can see the pollen grains coming out. Pollen in the pollen grains represent the male gametophyte. If you touch the opened anthers of the hibiscus or any other flowers, you would find deposition of the yellowish powdery pollen grains on your fingers. Sprinkle these grains on the drop of the water taken on the glass slide and observe under a microscope. You will really be amazed at the variety of the architecture, sizes, shapes, and colors designs seen in the pollen grains from different species. Pollen grains are generally spherical, measuring about 25 to 50 micrometers in diameter. It has prominent two-layered wall. The hard outer layer called the exine is made up of sporopollenin, which is one of the most resistant organic material known. It can withstand high temperature and strong acids and alkali. No enzyme that degrades the sporopollen is so far known. Pollen grain exine has prominent apertures called germ pores where the sporopollen is absent. Pollen grains are well preserved as the fossils because of the presence of the sporopollen. The exine exhibits a fascinating array of patterns and designs. Why do you think the exine should be hard? What is the function of the germ pore? The inner wall of the pollen grain is called the intine. It is thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. The cytoplasm of the pollen grain is surrounded by the plasma membrane. When the pollen grain is mature, it contains two cells, the vegetative cells and generative cells. The vegetative cells is bigger, has abundant food reserve, and a large, irregularly shaped nucleus. Okay, when the pollen grain it has the vegetative cells, and vegetative cells is bigger and has abundant food reserves and a large, irregularly shaped nucleus. The generative cell is small and floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell, and it is the spindle shaped which with a dense cytoplasm and a nucleus. In over 60% of the angiosperms, the pollen grains are shed at this two cell stage. In the remaining species, the generative cells divide mitotically to give rise to the two male gametes before pollen grains are shed. Three celled stage. The pollen grains of many species cause severe allergies and bronchial afflictions in some people, often leading to the chronic respiratory disorders, asthma, bronchitis, etc. It may be mentioned that the Parthenium and the carrot grass that came into India as contaminant with imported wheat has become ubiquitous in occurrence and causes pollen allergy, leading to the chronic disorders, chronic respiratory disorders. Okay. Pollen grains are rich in nutrients. It has become a fashion in recent years to use the pollen tablets as the food supplements in Western countries. A large number of the pollen products in the form of the tablets and the syrups are available in the market. Pollen consumption has been claimed to increase the performance of the athletes and racehorses. Bee pollen from England, natural bee collected pollen in tiny golden pods. It is written inside this diagram, right, of the packaging of the tablet. Natural bee collected pollen in a tiny golden pods. A natural food from the honeybees. Net weight 45 oz. And here we can see all the products, pollen products. That is bee pollen. What is that? I can't see it. Bee pollen. New. I can't see it. Okay. Something starting with S. This is the bee pollen cream. Uh, Sorry to say this diagram is not that clear. The energy shake of bee pollen. Then bee pollen. Power extract. You can see inside your NCERT diagram that will be perfect about for you guys. When once they are shed, pollen grains have to land on the stigma before they lose viability. If they have to bring about fertilization, how long do you think the grains retain viability? The period for which the pollen grains remain viable is highly variable and to some extent depends on the prevailing temperature and the humidity. And in some cereals such as rice and wheat and pollen grains lose viability within 30 minutes of their release, and in some members of the Rosaceae, Leguminosae and Solanaceae they maintain viability for months. You may have heard of storing semen and sperms of many animals, including humans, for the artificial insemination. It is possible to store the pollen grains of the large number of the species for years in the liquid nitrogen, that is minus 196 degrees Celsius, and such stored pollen can be used as the pollen banks, similar to the seed banks in crop breeding programs. In the crop breeding programs, similar to the seed banks, such stored pollen can be used at the pollen banks similar to the seed banks. Uh, Pollen banks, seed banks, and the crop breeding programs in the pistol. Here we are going to end this video up to here. Now in the next video we will continue this chapters, so we will continue one chapter part by part. So thank you. We'll complete the chapters, right? So best of luck, and I'll complete the chapter part by part. Thank you.